The Negro Justice League.
Hi, welcome to the Negro Justice League, a Black Nerd podcast, episode 92. I'm your host, Jerry.
It's your boy, Jay.
And today we have a special guest, Denny, a.k.a. Denny Von Doom. Denny, go ahead, say what's up, let us know who you are, where to find you, all that jazz.
Yo, my name's Denny Von Doom. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, all that jazz, Twitch, at Denny Von Doom as well. Happy to be here.
Yes, I am happy to have you. So today, couple things. One, we're calling this episode 92, but if you're listening to the podcast and you're following the podcast, this may not be episode 92. What had happened was, and I think I discussed this before on the show, is I got a new computer, and in transitioning my old episodes to my new episodes, I had some things that didn't get edited, and I never went and dug them back up, so they may not become episodes. So there's some trickery going on with the numbers. Also, if you're wondering why we haven't released a podcast in quite some time, it is because we've been spending most of our podcasting energy on Twitch at Black Nerdcast, Black Nerd CAST, doing more informal, just chatting conversations. If you don't know what that is, we basically turn our cameras on, it's a Skype, and we talk about the news for the week and what's going on, and there's an opportunity to chat live. So if you're not familiar with Twitch, by all means, please join us on that. Tuesdays and Fridays at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and you'll be able to interact with us a lot more casually. I really do enjoy it, so please join us there. There was something else involved in that. Oh, so today, I'm not 100% sure when this episode is going to get released, but and we typically don't tell you all when we're recording, but today, instead of the news, like having our multiple news items that we discuss, there's really only one thing anybody wants to talk about, and that's the election. We just found out a few hours ago that it looks like Joe Biden has enough electoral college votes to become the next president of the United States. And so it's been a long week, and I just want to get everybody's opinions on how your week was and then how you feel about it now. We can start with Jay.
My week has been kind of trash. For those who don't know, through the streams that we do on Twitch, I've been teaching English mainly online since I've been stuck back in the States. And every single one of my students has continuously been asking me about this election, what I think about Donald Trump. So I ended up taking like a few days off of work just so I didn't have to deal with those types of questions. Family got sick, I think, due to stress. My mom works with a bunch of white folks who she did not want to see at work after November 3rd. So it has been, like probably for most Black homes, a stressful week of kind of just seeing how this was going.
All right, Denny, how's your week been?
My week's been all right. Last week was my birthday, so I was sick for a bit during it, but overall it was good. My grandparents stopped by in their minivan, with their masks on outside the house and brought me some cake. So I was obviously, the news today makes me a lot happier. But yeah, overall, week was decent. Can't complain too much. Just, obviously a lot of stress and anxiety leading up to everything. But for the result.
Yeah, it was a stressful week for me too. I ended up spending most of my time watching the news. Like if I'm awake, I'm watching the news pretty much all week. And I'm not a big news watcher. But this week it's been on, like even while I'm working, it's on in the background, just waiting because nobody knew exactly when we would know anything. And so, to know that we now have what looks like maybe a relatively solid result and it being the result that we wanted, I'm really excited for that. And then also just, knowing the influence and seeing people acknowledge the impact that Black women have had on this election and basically saving the world at this point. I really appreciate that people even notice that that's what happened, because typically Black women do what they do and nobody says anything about it. So happy.
Yeah, and it was a big youth turnout too this year. Awesome to see, especially in places like Georgia. The other hotspots, Detroit had like a massive turnout, which is pretty cool.
Georgia in particular is kind of what I was talking about when I was talking about Black women saving the world. If you don't know, the short of it is Stacey Abrams was cheated out of the gubernatorial whatever election in Georgia. What was that, 2 years ago now? And that was basically because of major voter suppression efforts. And so she, in her 2 years since then, spent her time basically getting people registered to vote, advocating to change some of those laws that were disenfranchising folks, and really contributed hundreds of thousands of voters, new voters, to Georgia's numbers. And those numbers are obviously what changed the tide, with Georgia going blue for the first time in several years. So there's that. And then obviously Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms of Atlanta has been campaigning for Joe Biden since well before everybody else. Even before it was cool to do so, she did. And, that's important to people, local people. And so, those things contributed to help getting Ann Harris into the White House. So we can't forget.
I'm really happy that this isn't how some people thought it's going to take weeks, if not more than a month, to get like official results. I'm really glad that the mail-in voting was such a strong push for us to be able to see this, even though it took a week, that, by Saturday afternoon, we pretty much had it understood. Because I really wasn't looking forward to another week of what if, what not, especially with Nevada taking as long as they did until almost, right after Philly basically made their announcement for the votes to be counted. And we still got votes that are being counted, but at least we knew for the Electoral College votes how it was a done deal.
And then obviously there's a bunch of frivolous lawsuits floating around, and will continue to do so until Electoral College votes probably, and maybe beyond that, I don't know. But most of them don't have any base, or none of them do. And so we should be pretty good. So.
Yeah, the ones for Georgia and Arizona and Nevada have already been thrown out by the judges because they said you don't even have evidence to even have you wasting our time, so go away. So I figure that's going to be the majority of it. And I can't wait. I can't wait to see how this transpires, although since, Trump is still going to be president for at least a few more months, I am still on edge about how he's going to do his bow out.
Yeah, so Georgia does have a recount coming, which shouldn't affect the results too much. Usually recounts result in tens and hundreds of numbers being moved around. But Biden is so far ahead in Georgia that it probably won't change anything. But Georgia also has a runoff for the Senate. We have 2 senators outstanding that did not get enough to win. And so January 5th, Georgia will be doing a runoff for 2 senators. And if the Democrats win both of those elections, then we will have a majority in the Senate. Not super confident about that, but that's what's happening. All right. So that being said, let's move into the agenda. Today we're talking about The Boys season 2, and followed by Lovecraft Country. Obviously, I'm going to stop giving spoiler alerts for this show because I really feel like, what's the point? Like, the podcast discussing TV shows and movies, and we can't really discuss them without spoiling them. So here we are. If you don't want to hear nothing about these shows, this might not be the episode for you. So we're gonna start with The Boys season 2. I really took this as season 1 was great. It was well received. People enjoyed it. And watching this, even in the first episode, I got the impression that this was season 1 on steroids. Like, all the wildness and the craziness of season 1, they took it up a notch here and gave us season 2. Is that the impression that you all got?
Big time.
I'd say in some ways, yeah, definitely ramped in comparison. I actually got the pleasure of going to like before COVID happened, like right before COVID happened in February. It was already kind of talked about, but I went to a convention and it was for The Boys. They had an entire cast there, a majority of the cast. So like Homelander, Keith Urban, and Starlight. All of them were there on stage talking about season 2.
That's dope.
And yeah, they said they were trying to up the ante and outdo themselves a bit with the season, which I think, in a lot of ways they definitely have done. I was pretty happy with with the result overall. But yeah.
I honestly don't know if I was. I think I was kind of the boys out at this point. Like, I enjoyed season 1. By the time I got to this, I was just like, you know what, this is a bit much. But I mean, I watched the whole thing and I didn't dislike it. But there were points where I was like, okay, like, I don't know. It's very high. It's highly stylized to me. The way the show is done, and it can be a bit much at times for me.
I agree. I think it's definitely over the top. I think that what kind of hurt it, my opinion, is the fact that it was doing week to week. I think that the binge nature of the first season really took people by surprise a bit. So like a lot of folks were just kind of cruising through it. Especially the first half of the season, I think, was really strong, like the pilot episode and stuff like that. So it gave you a reason to keep watching. And I think season 2 kind of like went so many different directions. One season, like just the stuff with the deep, for example, was just all over the place. So I think that some of that kind of diluted the focus a bit. Then you had, of course, some of the other characters like Stormfront, who just people weren't expecting if they didn't read the comics. I
know they did receive a lot of flack for Amazon Prime did for the way they released this. They released the first 3 episodes, and then every episode after that was weekly. And people were just livid, and they received a lot of hate mail about that. I first was annoyed when I got through the first 3 episodes and realized there was nothing left, and I had to wait a few days. But I really think it was a smart move. Just splitting the difference between a weekly show and a full-on binge, because if they drop everything at once, you're gonna watch it in a couple days, and then there'll be nothing for a year. You have nothing to look forward to. Sometimes you miss a lot of stuff when you binge. I know for me, when I watch episode after episode after episode, sometimes I miss things because your attention span is gonna go in and out over that amount of time. So I do like that they gave you a lot. The first 3 episodes is usually what takes you to get hooked on a show. They gave you that, and then said, all right, you're gonna have to come back every Friday to get more. I actually kind of enjoyed the anticipation, I would say.
I was just about to say, between this and Lovecraft Country, and one was coming out on Friday, one was coming out on Sunday, I was having something to look forward to because I wasn't having to binge watch these shows. And a few years ago, I would have told you I want to be able to see everything at once at my choice. But now I'm especially getting why they do it that way, because I do like the anticipation. As someone who's read the comic, being able to see it and see how it's being done differently than the comic was part of the reason why I was doing it so much.
I could see that. I think I would have liked, probably, if it came out in maybe like first 4 episodes because of how episode 3 ended, and then maybe like 3 at a time. Would have been cool for me. But I don't mind the week to week either format. I think you had a good point about like it being a good kind of supplementary for Lovecraft, having each one and kind of around the same time.
I mean, and we talk about it like it's.
Plus, I think with.
What was it?
I was just going to say, I think Amazon, because they really are clearly trying to get their levels up, so to speak, to match with Netflix, I think not binging is very important for them to like hold on to whatever shares they can have of people streaming their shows.
Oh, for sure. It's definitely a money move. And they had an after show too, which I think, was a nice kind of thing to include. I do appreciate like behind the scenes and after show stuff. The same with like Lovecraft, like podcasts or anything that's supplementary. I really like having like something to dive into after I finish an episode.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's just like, a little making of snippet or something like that. But it helps me put things into perspective about what I just watched. And also kind of like looking forward to the next episode and stuff like that. So yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, and like I think, like Jay said, it's in their best interest to try to drag the hype out. You don't want it to just like peak and fade real quick and nobody talks about it for another year. You really want to get a month or so out of the show. I think moving on, Denny brought up Stormfront, who was the new character, one of the new characters, the main new character this season, and was repulsive. I think as an actress, she did a great job. They wrote her character really well, but I mean, you have to hate her guts unless you don't. to put it shortly, she was a guy in the comics, but then they made her a woman, and she's basically a Nazi, or almost literally a Nazi, who survived several decades and is now part of the boys. And she starts off as just being annoying. Like she's rude, she's crass, she doesn't really go with the flow, and you don't know whether or not to like her because you kind of want to rebel against Vought, and she's doing that. And so you're like, maybe she's not terrible, but long story short, you find out she's a raging racist. And so for me, that's a done deal. Like, I'm like, oh, and they do it subtle. They do it in like a subtle, but it was done in a way that was like, I know she's racist, but I'm like, everybody, you know what I mean? Like, he did some murders that she murdered some folks unnecessarily, and feel like they're racially motivated, but you don't have concrete evidence. And so as a black person, I'm like, nope, I don't like it no matter where they go. But then they actually do go on. And I like it because he with, season 1 introduced Lander as like the worst of the worst. And then because he's evil, right? But he isn't inherently racist. So when you add racism on top of the evil, and it's like, oh my, like this is the worst. She gotta die. I guess I liked it.
Yeah, Homelander is just a big fascist, but like Stormfront's he's like the ultimate Karen, like just a whole another level. I think that's what the creator said too.
I mean, she has a haircut and everything.
He basically made a Karen before like even knowing, because the show was shot back in 2019. So it was really interesting seeing how relevant it is right now, considering what's going on at the time when it started the second season. But Stormfront, even if you don't get the ties to the name, by episode 3, I think everyone was pretty much, I don't know, it was kind of interesting to see people watch the first episode or two and then, oh my God, I love Stormfront. She's so awesome. Like, I just kept seeing them online. I'm like, oh, they're in for a nice surprise in a couple episodes here. So I think that was pretty well done by the team, the writers and stuff like that, for making it grow over time, I think, and just showing how terrible she is. And really, I mean, it's the boys. Do you really trust any of them to be good outside of, Starlight? I don't. I mean, Maeve is.
I enjoyed the moment that her and Homelander had where she's talking to his son and she's feeding him all of this just racist propaganda about the us versus them narrative. And Homelander, who is up to this point the evil character, looks at her like, what the hell? Like, he gives her this look like, we don't take it that far. And I was like, I really enjoyed that because it's like he's evil, but he also has principles. It's like a lawful evil versus a chaotic one. Is just like, forget everybody, and the other one's like, you gotta stay within the lines. And I enjoyed that because he didn't say anything, but he didn't like her teaching his son racism, even though he's a murderer. Like, and I enjoyed that. He hates equally.
I think that was perfect, the fact that they changed her from a man in the comics who really is like a copy version of Homelander to a woman, and a woman that looks like her. Because the first 2 episodes, you really could see, especially online, people thinking she's an ally. Oh, she's not for the man. She's going to fight for the small people. Like, they were really feeding into this. Then by episode 3, when she starts the murdering and starts giving her ideology, it's like, oh, and it goes into that whole, like, white woman allyship that you kind of seen through this election, where they say a good point, but truth be told, it's hiding something a lot more sinister. And whoever the actress was, I forgot her name. She played it really, really well because she flipped that switch, especially when she was talking to A-Train about how she would just be kind of using the code word and gaslighting him a little bit with conversation, where you knew as a black man, he knew what she was doing, but everyone else was just like, why don't you like her? It was done really well.
Speaking of A-Train.
I watched the interview of her too. Apparently she's Jewish and she was talking about how it was a bit awkward for her
fun.
to take on this role, but it was a nice challenge, obviously. And she would just apologize to A-Train after every take.
I love it.
Basically.
I love it. speaking of A-Train, this season, he was my least favorite character in season 1. Like, I hate his guts. I hate what he stands for. I hate who he is as a person because he's just a caricature of black men, and it pisses me off. Like, if you even on the show, every time they show him, they start playing hip hop music. Like, any scene that he's in, they start playing hip hop, and then like he's drinking Cristal and stuff, like literally drinking Cristal, popping bottles, and I hate him. But they broke him down so low. Him and the Deep just came so low this season that it was like, especially the Deep, it became difficult to hate them because they were just so pathetic. And I thought that was
cool. Yeah, I like the way they broke down both characters, and they just used them to show how much people really just care about being superheroes to have that kind of influence. I mean, they're so focused on getting back into the Seven that there's not really much else to their life. You don't see any other friendships outside of creepy Arrow dude and like, the collective, the Church of the Collective or whatever. Like, there's not really any support system for either character. And then the one time that he reaches out, or the Deep reaches out, Homelander's like, cover that up. Like, there's no there's no support for either character really. I mean, and obviously A-Train is terrible. That's not really surprising, but it just seems like people they make their entire life or ideas of their life surround around being part of something else that is not even about being a hero or saving people.
Nobody has been saved yet in this show. Let's just to be clear, to be in the show, it's a show where everyone is a superhero. If not a superhero, they're like, powerful, good guys that can fight. And no one has been saved yet in 2 seasons.
The only saving that's been done was in the fake movie they were making. That's the only time they've saved any.
Even the boys, the people they trying to save ain't making it.
I would not want to be part of the
I don't want to be involved in none of it.
Unless you got some plot armor, because clearly.
Yeah, so we're gonna wrap this up really quickly. So I'll hit a couple points. Black Noir got a little more shine, and I enjoy the black joke. Like, it's difficult sometimes for shows written by white people to make black jokes that are tasteful, and they have very subtle yet hilarious black jokes about Black Noir. Like, first of all, his name is Black in English, Black in French, and then like there's little things like when they were sitting and the Homelander was ordering food in the restaurant at the bot place. Remember they had like a diner or whatever, and something on the menu was like, it was some type of deep dark chocolate dessert that was named after Black Noir. Like, each character had something named after them, and Black Noir's was chocolate. Like, it's little subtle stuff that's like, it shows the racism of the system, but it's also. And I want to add that he, the way that he's extremely powerful, but the way that he was defeated with Peanut, and I read that the actor that plays Black Noir, who happens to be black, which is totally unnecessary since you can't see any of his skin, they still put a black actor in there, which is hilarious. But he's actually allergic to peanuts in real life, very allergic, and so they just wrote that into the show to mess with him. Like, that's hilarious. Cool. Because I'm sure somebody was like, how do you beat Black Noir? And you're like, oh, peanut.
The funniest thing about that whole situation with Black Noir is I did not think Black Noir was actually black. Mm-hmm. And during one of the scenes where Homelander's having an interview and he's like, oh, we're all about diversity.
Yeah.
Black Noir is black. I thought that was the racist aspect of Homelander. Then you come to find out at one of the episodes that, oh, he really is black. So even Homelander is just like, oh, we got a black person.
That's hilarious.
Really fucked up.
But it also plays on real life where you have every black superhero ever is black something. Like, they don't, when they write a black superhero in, it's always one token and he's black whatever. And so they did this because, I mean, the whole thing is a satire. So I think that was. All right. Parting words before we rate this. Anything to add before I ask for your ratings and move on to Lovecraft?
I want to give a shout out to Giancarlo, in the role as the head of bot.
He is always a pleasure in everything he does.
Just showing out in every scene he was in, pretty much, and making Homelander look like a mini version of Trump, basically, just cowering beneath him,
which
was pretty cool to watch.
Yeah.
I think the casting has just been one of the strongest points for the show, to be honest.
I think that's true.
Even if you don't really know them for their other work, they've definitely done a really good job with every role. And I really hear some casting news about Soldier Boy showing up in
I'm ready for
season
that.
3, which is going to be pretty interesting. With Jensen Ackles from Supernatural.
All right, so we're going to give a rating A through F. I'm going to start with Denny. What do you, A through F, how would you give this season 2?
I'm going to give it a solid B plus, somewhere in that range.
And Jay?
I'm gonna give it B plus. I was kind of hoping what we saw from Homelander at the end of this season was what we were gonna start at in this season. It looks like he's gonna kind of finally go off the rails in season 3. But this was definitely an improvement over season 1. The storyline was really strong. I started caring more about some of those characters, so definitely a B plus.
I'm gonna give it a B plus as well. I struggled with some of the plot points. It was just there was a lot going on that wasn't necessarily explained well enough. Like we have a major villain set up for season 3, the Congresswoman, whatever, and she was working in the background, but I don't think it necessarily came together the way they wanted it to in the end. Like when they reveal who she was, it should have been a huge oh my god, aha, blah 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 moment. But I think some of that was lost in some of the confusion for me as what exactly is even happening right now. But yeah, I'll give it a B plus. All right, highlight of the day. We are moving on to Lovecraft Country. This is season 1 HBO show. I don't even know where to begin with this. This movie, if you're not familiar, and apparently nobody knew who H.P. Lovecraft was because people don't read.
Really?
Did they not know who he was, or they didn't know?
They didn't know who he was. People thought Lovecraft Country was just a cool name. Like nobody knew. They didn't. People I saw, I didn't see anybody who knew like, what Lovecraft. Like people didn't associate Lovecraft and then go monster. That connection wasn't there. That being said, if you don't know, H.P. Lovecraft wrote a lot of books about monsters and invented a lot of the genre stuff that you see today. A lot of his monsters exist in other movies. Obviously, Cthulhu being the most popular one that everyone knows. But some people don't even know what that was. So there's that. But Lovecraft Country is actually a book with a few, like 5 or 6 vignettes about the monsters. Like H.P. Lovecraft was known to be a raging racist. And so there's this contradiction in Black people, in particular, Black nerds, that they highlight in the movie, where you love these stories. So you read these stories because you like the genre, but you also, the author actually hates you and your existence. So, trying to reconcile those differences. And that's something that they deal with in the first episode. But what was I saying? Lovecraft Country, the book, is written by another guy, white guy, not too long ago, where he takes Lovecraft's monsters and sets them in a story with Black people in the 50s, I think, where yes, they deal with these monsters and the witchcraft and whatever, but the real monster is racism. And so, like, it's really cool. Like, it's a really cool play where actually the characters acknowledge that H.P. Lovecraft exists and was a racist. They're the ones that come up with the title line Lovecraft Country. And so that's cool, but they also end up coming in contact with Lovecraft's monster. Like it's meta. Like it's hard to explain this. And I think that's part of the problem with the reception of it. The people that understood it absolutely loved it. But there was a large swath of people that had no idea what was going on because it was too meta for them.
I feel like a lot of people who said that they had issues or that the storyline wasn't tight, which I will say the fact that it felt like an anthology series at times kind of led to that, but it really was for the fact that people didn't understand the allegory between these monsters, racism, Black people, Lovecraft himself, and then this book that's written about Lovecraft and his racist ways and towards
There's
monsters.
layers, baby.
It's an onion.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I do agree with that, but I am one of the people that does have issues with Lovecraft Country. But that being said, I do really enjoy a lot of aspects of the show. One thing I thought was interesting about the show early on was that the creator or the writer, he actually pitched it as a TV show originally, and it got completely panned. Like no one wanted to touch the subject matter. And then of course a few years passed by, and as usual with Hollywood, certain things change and things are hip now. So he actually got approached about making it a show after making it a book. So originally Lovecraft Country was pitched as a TV show, didn't get picked up, and then he reformatted it for a book format basically. So that was pretty interesting. For the show, I think that they did an amazing job. I think Misha Green has a really sharp direction when it comes to her ambition. I personally feel like I wish that it was a little bit less ambitious in some ways for a season one. I think there's a lot of ideas in the first season that made it a little bit harder to, I mean, not even just from the general audience, but just from episode to episode, if you see it kind of like as each individual story, I can see that. But man, sometimes the pacing is like, it's all over the place. Like there's moments where I'm like, okay, like my neck is spinning, I'm trying to keep up. We're going into, cosmic horror and Mozgovs and that's cool. But then I just wish that sometimes, at least my overall feeling for the season is I wish that sometimes we got more time with the characters just being themselves and like soaking in some of what's happening before we go into the big story set pieces and like, oh, this is HBO.
I mean, we did. That was episode 1. You had episode 1 to get to know these people, and then after that, we gone. Take off. And I think both.
And the pilot is great. Like I love the first episode. I think
that was the only one I didn't like.
So well. But then the second episode is like, oh, here's Uncle George is gone. This whole place is blowing up. I thought they were going to be in that. I thought they were going to be in that because I haven't read the book. I thought they were going to be in that house for like at least 2 or 3 episodes.
No, that's not how the book is either. I mean, Jay brought it up. It's an anthology series. The book is several different vignettes, and the story. What I really enjoyed, and I think I figured this out probably during the 3rd episode, is every episode of this show was a different genre, like a different subgenre of horror, and I thought that was amazing because we have like a haunted house story. We have a below what's the name, Journey to the Center of Earth story. We have alien story. Every week when you tune in, you get witch story. Like you get a different genre of horror. There's one that's like just super gory, and I loved that. And I also loved the pace. Like halfway or 2/3 of the way through the first episode, I was like, you know what? I don't think this show is for me because we were really just setting the stage, getting to know the characters. They're, singing and dancing, and everybody's a family. We're going on a road trip, and I was like, you know what? I don't know if I'm gonna make it through this because it was slow. But then as soon as they start to encounter their first, run-ins with racism, that's when I was like, damn, this is good. Like that first, when they go to the diner, and then they have the car chase scene and all of that, that was terrifying. Like that was some of the scariest. Just them driving down the street with a cop behind them was some of the scariest television.
And they couldn't speed.
Yeah, can't speed, can't slow down.
Yeah.
And to get caught
really
anyway.
Well done. I think the pilot is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Like I think it's sold the show. Like I'm pretty sure they pitched the pilot probably pretty heavily, and they were like, just do it.
And I
pilot episode.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was gonna say the pilot episode I really love so much that the second episode starting the way it did, where I was even recognizing, oh, they're gonna do this every season, almost had me upset. But the second episode I ended up loving so much, and the third episode, again jumping into that different genre, I had to allow myself to be okay with the fact that they're going to be doing this for the whole season, because I absolutely could have done a full season just based on that one storyline that kind of Denny's talking about, of knowing these characters, how they're dealing with monsters, these races, this magic. But the way the story was done with the different genres was exciting to me because we could see Black people interact in those different genres, which was amazing to me in itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because we always see those genres where we're maybe the token Black person or one of the, supporting characters, but we're never all the characters. So when you have a haunted house and they have, a voodoo woman coming to mark the house to keep, evil from going inside and out, I love that because you don't usually see that, but Black people could recognize that and not see it as a evil thing. That was really awesome for me. And each episode continuously made me be like, wow, I want to see more of this type of stuff.
And
I think that the show would have benefited from having 13 to 14 episodes instead of 10. I think it would have made it easier to balance that out because there's a point in time when I'm like in episode like 4 or 5 where I have no idea like what time frame has passed between episodes anymore. It's all just kind of merged into like, okay, Christina's being annoying. He's popping up everywhere. I don't know. I don't know where we're going from point A to point B sometimes. And I think that's where that's some of that gets kind of lost when you switch between each genre kind of set up for individual stories. But at the same time, you get plenty of awesome set pieces. You get a lot of like where there's a lost ark, you get some Goonies in there. There's a lot of references, even just how it's set up cinematically that I think was really well done. Which I was really impressed by. I mean, the team, like the Hippolyta episode, like all that stuff was extremely ambitious for a first season. I think they did a lot of it. They pulled off really, really well.
I mean,
and I just kind of wish it was like they had given it like a full solid 13 or something like that, where I kind of got a little bit more breathing room for each individual character, where it's not like we're going from 0 to 100 the first 10 minutes, and then we just stay there for like the rest of the episode. It would have been nice for some of the characters, I think, anyway. And I love Uncle George. I wish I got more Uncle George in there. I heard he's still alive in the book.
He is still alive in the book. But him and what's his name? Michael K. Williams' name. What's his name? Montrose. Him and Montrose, I think, would overstep each other. They'd be on top of each other's toes if they both existed in the show. I don't think you need them both. Really. I do think the idea to have one of them go was smart, and Montrose's storyline is a lot heavier than Uncle George. Like Uncle George is just really a cool uncle that made a little slip on the side, but Montrose like has a whole backstory and issues and things to work on that were really cool. I had something to say before that. I mean, and part of the criticism with the show being too short. I mean, it's the first season. It's an all-black cast and a white girl, and it's very daring genre piece. So I mean, HBO is not going to give them 13, 14, 50 episodes. It just ain't gonna happen. So I think they did. The fact that they got 10 instead of 8, I was happy about it. I thought it was gonna end after 8 episodes. So I thought that was cool. Let's talk about characters. I brought up Montrose, so let's talk about Montrose, played by Michael K. Williams. That is his name. Who is always a pleasure. Like he's always plays that gritty, gutter type character with a heart. Like that's really what they cast him as, and I think he does it so well. He really seems like a genuine cool guy, but he also seems like you. And so I loved it. And obviously they get into his sexuality and how he had to hide that, how he was abused as a child, all of that, and he eventually unpacks it, and I think that was done beautifully. I think showing him open up and being able to be fragile, and his son having to reconcile with having a father who wasn't what you thought it was, not even your father. But I thought all of that was just beautiful to have that going on at the same time. We're dealing with monsters, we're dealing with white people, there's a witch trying to kill you, like all of that going on in the background. I thought that was beautifully done.
Michael K. Williams is one of the best actors I think we've had in this modern time, who doesn't get enough respect because he does play a certain role really, really well, but he does black man pain extremely well while also being vulnerable, because two of his main characters that he's probably going to be known for is Omar and this, and both of them play black gay men in the situations they're in with that. I don't think Uncle George could be in this the way they wrote it, because it takes away from the performance of Montrose especially with Montrose and Atticus and the conversations they have to have. I think if Uncle George was there, none of those conversations would have happened because Atticus would have just stayed with Uncle George.
Yeah.
So it was neat, and Montrose being played the way he was played, and seeing how each episode you got to see more of him. You got to see him trying to break out of this, so to speak, whether he wanted to or not, was amazing.
And I like the idea, as painful as it was, that Atticus had to find out that Uncle George wasn't the hero he thought he was, but then not being able to reconcile with him because he's gone. So that's like his whole view of who this person was has now changed, and he can't do anything about it because this person's dead. And so the anger, like the transition of anger, where Uncle George was the hero and Montrose was the villain, now it kind of flips where Uncle George is low key dirty, and you know Montrose did a little better than you thought he did. And so,
I was gonna say, especially since one of the themes that I really loved was how much once Atticus kind of really realized why his father was the way he was, and why it made him have such a hard relationship with him, and whether he needed to let that go or not, because there was a choice. And he chose to let go of that for the bigger purpose of his family. And I think that's just one of those things as a black man myself, I wish it worked out that way.
Yeah. Because in real life, you don't get the opportunity to watch your parents go through what they went through as children that formed them into who they are now. You don't get to see it. But Atticus did visually with his own eyes see his daddy being beat more than once in a short period of time and understand, okay, this is why he thought he had to do that for me, because this happened to him. Like all of that came together at once in the middle of a crisis, which was cool. All right, new characters. Talk about Atticus. Atticus, played by Jonathan Majors, was cool. I mean, I brought up on NJL and Chill that Jonathan Majors kind of playing the same guy. Even though he's had only a few roles, it's the same guy in these roles to me. But having read a few of the vignettes, he did Atticus justice. Atticus is like you like him. He's got charisma. He's kind of mostly a good dude, but he has a lot of bottled up anger and a lot of issues from the way he was raised, things that happened before. It's justifiable, but I think they did a good job bringing that from the page to the screen with his just 1 minute he's pissed, but he's a good guy. Like it's confusing, but I think he did it well.
Yeah, I like that Atticus.
I haven't read the book.
I made it for sure. Like I think that he was definitely they showed the humanity for him. I think that he's also got so many characters just revolved around his impact on the show and obviously the ending. But yeah, I think that I don't know, John Majors. I think he kind of got himself into a leading man kind of position now. I think he's going to start getting a lot more roles after this portrayal. To be honest, I know he was in talks with Marvel and a couple other things, but I feel like Warner Brothers is probably going to lock him down in some major franchise after this one.
Jay, you were saying something?
Yeah, he's definitely going to get the Yaya treatment after this. I think for me, Atticus ended up being the least interesting character in the show, because this really did turn to an ensemble piece for me. Like the first episode really felt like it was going to be his story, his and Letty's story, but as I saw more of the episodes, and some of my favorite episodes weren't about him at all. And while Jonathan Majors did an amazing job for me of showing Atticus going through all those things, especially with Montrose, his whole family situation, I felt at times his character performed the way they needed him to perform for that episode or for that week, which is fine. It worked out for the most part, but I definitely feel like it could have been done better. Specifically, the whole Jihad situation and Letty. Like there was a few situations in those where I was like, technically you could say this is Atticus, but we've never really seen him be this way before until this moment. But again, I think Jonathan Majors is really, really good at playing this type of character. I just hope the next time I see him in something, he's not playing the angry young black man who has the issues with his father that come from past.
I told you. And I told you the boy was typecast. You were like, no. And I said, yes, that's what it is.
Yeah.
That's what it
I think that I can see him getting typecast as John Stewart, Green Lantern, and then they give him the same kind of angry, role. But at the same time, I think he's gonna get more options now. Kind of like how Denzel Washington's son did after his last few roles kind of opened up for him. So maybe he'll have more opportunity to choose something else. He kind of reminds me of like a Batman in a way in the story, where like you're kind of the lead, but at the same time everything revolves around your orbit, but the other characters are more interesting in a way, like you were saying.
I think that was my criticism of Black Panther, was that everybody outshone Black Panther in his own movie. Like all the other characters were. That's what the movie is about. But whatever. All right, Letty, Juicy Smollett's sister. She did Journey. I love her in everything she did and everything she does, but her performance tied this show really closely to Underground for me. Like, yes, we have some of the same producers or whatever making the show that made Underground, so that's, a thing, but it almost felt like the same character was brought out of slavery into the 50s. It was just, I don't think that's a criticism of her. It was just in there. Like, I felt like it was very similar to watching Underground. That being said, I love the way Letitia was fiercely independent and did not, ascribe to the standards of what a woman should be in the 50s, which were very, strong standards that it would be difficult to escape. Like, for instance, she had a bomb wardrobe that included a lot of pants. Women in the 50s did not wear pants. It was frowned upon. It was viewed as masculine. It was viewed as, even like, hypersexual type thing. Like, you shouldn't be wearing pants, please. But I mean, for her in the 50s to be having pantsuits and pants outfits and like all of that was like, she had that one outfit that was like a riding outfit. That was the first time she put on pants, maybe. But I don't know. After that, I thought that was really, really dope. Like in the book, when she went into the closet, she found a whole bunch of ball gowns, like the most beautiful, gorgeous ball gowns. And there was some of that in the movie, in the show, but the show added the pants. And that was significant to me because that didn't happen. And she looked damn good doing it. Like she wore her wardrobes and she looked amazing. And there's that scene in the first episode where she's walking around with her hot red little short or whatever she had on, and a white woman is looking her up and down like, what's she doing here? Why you? And she just took her glasses down and gave her the up and down. Like I thought that was so cool. And also, she's never the damsel in distress. She's a damsel. She's the girlfriend. She's, gorgeous. She wears clothes, but she holds her own mentally, physically. She's Atticus's equal in the show. And I think that's extraordinarily important. And I like the way that was done.
I think she's the hero in a lot of ways compared to Atticus. There's a few times in this show where she's the one that makes things happen. The one that they that whole invulnerability thing that she had, that's something in most shows they would have given that to the man, definitely. Mm-hmm. When she getting chopped up and thrown, the fact that when she runs, she don't ever slip, she don't ever fall. She out there doing a 4-2 like nothing.
Her running scenes were exceptional. her just running from the monster. I think she does twice in the show. It was beautiful. Like she was running the way that you're supposed to run. Like usually when women run in these type of movies, they're trying to be beautiful, trying to be cute, trying to be dainty. She was running like track star. Like she was moving.
Yeah. Her physicality was really on.
Yeah, I thought that was really dope.
In every scene.
Yeah,
I think she did a great job. I say especially after the finale, like, and knowing that Atticus is gone, it makes me see the entire season in a different light, because I do feel like it kind of props her up as, the overall hero of the story. Even though you had Atticus and his backstory and those kind of things involved as well, it's a lot more clear to me in the story overall is after the last episode.
There was a criticism.
The story for her is hero's journey.
I think that's everybody's story. I honestly think that's just the theme. For everybody has a hero's journey in this show. What was I saying? There was a lot of criticism of her relationship with Atticus. People saying on screen they didn't have any chemistry. And
really?
I disagree completely. I felt like they had chemistry from episode 1 until the end. It was always a tight string between them two of tension all the time. I think people misconstrued their arguments. They had a lot of heated arguments. And I think people take that to mean they don't like each other or don't love each other. but you're dealing with two people, Atticus in particular, that have a ton of trauma, and they're in the highest stress situation anybody's ever been in life for a long period of time. So they're going to have fights. And I think I just took that as, part of the situation and not them not having chemistry.
I think that's one of the situations where having more episodes would have helped delineate some of that. So you could have more moments that aren't necessarily tied to high impact or tension situations where they're just yelling at each other. But I never got any inkling that they didn't have chemistry. I feel like the first couple episodes, it is pretty hot and heavy, to be honest. I mean, obviously there's a disconnect with, the episode 2 with the doppelganger version of Atticus and that whole scene. But I think that they did a really good job of kind of showing why they care about each other. They don't give up on each other in the long run, despite having moments.
My favorite character of the series, sorta, and I say this with a huge caveat, was Ruby. The actress is gorgeous. I think she's just so pretty, and she comes off as very intelligent. She was strong. She wasn't really here for Letitia's crap, but she still loved her. But they sent her down a path that I can't vibe with. And so, watching this show, I kept trying to, make an excuse for her. Trying to say, she's dealing with her life the way she's can. Ruby, I can forgive her, taking the potion and becoming a white woman to get her goals. I understand it's the 50s. There's huge walls to things that you want to do in life. And it's not something I would do, but I understand the motivation behind saying, let me be white for a little bit just so I can taste that life. But she was white for 30 minutes before she started harassing the black girl at her job. And I'm just I understand that privilege corrupt, but damn, you still black. You gonna be black in 15 minutes when this stuff wears off. Why are you so mean to the one black girl? And I wrote it off as, she's jealous. She wanted that job, couldn't get that job. Next thing you turn around, another black girl got it. So I guess she feels something. Then she started messing around with the white dude, which again, I was like, I don't know if that's what you do. I don't know if that's what I would do given the situation. But I wrote it off he's rich, he's handsome, he's giving her attention, he's giving her potions to be a white woman. Maybe she caught up. But then you find out he ain't even real, or he was real, but that ain't him. And she knows everything. She knows who Christina is. She knows what Christina is doing to her family. And you keep going over there. And I just couldn't reconcile that.
Even said, yo, if you're going to do something, if you're going to end up killing Atticus, just make sure you leave my sister out.
Which is disgusting.
It doesn't, I was trying to think, did they have a moment in the shows where she would have such a way about Atticus, where his death was okay just so this white woman said, I can be powerful? That was her whole thing. I just want to be powerful. There was no grander scheme, and you're taking her side, what? Because magic? Because you get to be a white woman? You don't really look like you're happy about it? You're finding out, there's dead body thing. This was one of those few weak points that I really never understood, and I really don't like how it ended with her just being killed, so to speak, off screen.
I think they failed that character, to be honest.
All the way.
Yeah.
I feel like when you look back at it, the entire plot point didn't really have much impact on any of the rest of the story at all. I mean, you got Christina, sure. I guess we wanted to empathize. I'm not empathizing with Christina at all, but if you wanted to try and make Christina more interesting, I guess that you have Ruby there. But really, with the way that everything played out, I mean, she's killed off, and none of her choices really had too much of an impact on everything else in the long run.
I don't think she did. I think Christina actually had a little bit of feelings in there for her, so I don't think she's really dead. But yeah, I couldn't rationalize anything she did, and it made me mad because I love the actress. So I was just like, why did they do Ruby like this? It didn't make no sense. Moving on, Christina, who is slippery. It's really she really doesn't have a good versus evil. You want her to be evil, and then sometimes you think she might be good, but she really does. She's really neutral in the sense of in anything. It's just the evil comes in when it's she has a by any means necessary way of getting her eternal like or immortal life. Like she does not have a problem killing who she has to kill, but it's not personal with her, which is like in the grand scheme of things that puts her on the side of evil. But as a character, she's just I don't know what she is. I don't know what to make.
I think she's white privileged. I mean, I think that's what that is. I mean, by any means necessary, she does not care about how anything affects anyone else in any scenario, regardless of, oh, your unborn baby. I don't care. Atticus, don't care about that either, regardless of. I mean, you're trying to get into this boys' club, and you're trying to use magic for whatever reason. But ultimately, you get the power. But what are you going to use that power for? What is her ultimate goal outside of immortality when she has that, when she has that in hand? I don't think she's going to do something just, good with that kind of energy or power.
That remains to be seen. Well,
if hope to me is white male privilege, then she is white woman.
She
privilege.
is. It's white feminism, which I've always said I've had a problem with. It's the me and mine at the expense of anybody else. And it does not include black women.
Also, she's the victim of the white men in her life. Her father, they wouldn't let me be part of the club. I'm doing this to gain power. You should know how it feels to be oppressed by those. I don't want to kill Atticus because I hate him. Do I want to even do this because he's technically my last family member? Ruby, I'd be willing to let all of this go to be with you because I've never had this before. He says all the lines that you generally hear from white women in terms of how they are not as bad as white men when they're brought to that mirror. But then as soon as her situation can even remotely be taken away from her, the moment Ruby tried to stop something, life didn't matter. Because at the end of the day, it mattered for her. It was her white supremacy and her being a white woman that ultimately mattered. And I love the way she was played. The whole thing with Emmett Till was disgusting, but I could also understand why she thought that was something she could do.
Mm-hmm. It made sense. It was like, you can't, and she had that conversation with Ruby, which is just the most disgusting conversation in the whole show, where Ruby lays it to her and was like, you can't empathize with black people. Like, a little boy was murdered and all these things happened to him. It's disgusting and you feel nothing. What is wrong with you? And then, Christina turns it on Ruby and was like, what you doing here then? Basically, like, you saying all this, but you still here. And I think that's
when I felt like she was gonna die. When she finished that monologue or whatever, I was like, making Christina pretty irredeemable here. I feel like something's gonna happen to her.
Yeah.
After that conversation.
And so the point was basically that they watch in real life be murdered on television repeatedly, and somehow they can continue to watch it and not feel like, because it's not them, they still can see it, recognize that it's probably not okay, but the connection of feeling it does not exist. And Christina, because she has the privilege of immortality, was able to reenact it. And the fact that she had to pay people to do to her what they did to Emmett Till in order to empathize was absolutely disgusting. Like, a lot of people had trouble watching it. I enjoyed it from a this is good television standpoint, although it was really difficult to watch and it was really just.
Yeah, I think that the show has gotten criticism the same way that Game of Thrones has it sometimes, with some of its portrayal of the violence level in different situations. I personally feel like it could have done without some of that stuff, or just like less of that dramatic type of situations. Like, I don't need to see someone on fire for like 30 seconds or almost a full minute, like screaming. I kind of do without that portion, and still get the same point across. But I think that that's kind of more of like the showrunner's discretion to a certain extent. I think that they kind of have like, they want to show the realism factor. I just wish that some of it was a bit more, not necessarily tasteful, but just like the scene with Montrose and when they went back in the past and in Tulsa, and to seeing that kid get shot in the face. Like, I don't really necessarily need to see that in the same way to kind of get that same gist about across to me.
Yeah.
But that's more of like, I guess, a personal preference. But I feel like if I was like, if I was a gay man or LGBT person, and like seeing that scene would probably be pretty traumatic, with no warning.
Yeah. I agree. Jay, I'm gonna let you handle Hippolyta. I know you in particularly enjoyed her story arc. I have issues with it, and yeah, so I'm gonna let you discuss her. Unless you're frozen.
Oh, I think he's back.
Mm-hmm.
Did you hear what I said?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I don't know. Is there going to be a second season?
I don't think we know yet.
I don't think they've.
It's not a hard
basically
no.
greenlit
Like
it.
watch. It's. I don't.
Yeah. I'm going to hold off on it. I'm going to say incomplete with what I think, because I actually want to see the second season if that does come, because there's a lot of storylines, especially with Hippolyta and Diana, that I kind of want to see fruition after how it ended before I make a real decision.
I
mean,
still need
I
you. I
like
still
some
need
of
you to
Hippolyta.
discuss the character.
I like some things about Hippolyta. I mean, I think that there's a lot that could have been done, but I liked her getting her own episode. I like the fact that she got to talk with Uncle George about how he made her feel small in different ways. I liked having those kind of conversations. I think that the show itself, for me, I like the episodes that were more focused on one or two characters, and kind of seeing it from their point of view, because I think that those were like the strongest. Obviously, there's a lot of set pieces in her personal episode that I think HBO was like, "Here's your budget." But I think that there were a lot of elements that I did like about how her character was portrayed. She's really smart. She sees through whatever that the scenario that they were trying to tell her. Which, I mean, obviously, they're not really used to what's happening. But I mean, the excuses they were coming up with, I'm like, come on, like. She's not stupid. She's gonna obviously find out that you guys are lying at some point in time.
I struggled a little bit with her intelligence. As an intelligent Black woman, you think I love them all, but with her, it didn't make sense how smart she was. It was like, is she an engineer? Is she an astronomer? Is she a physicist? What? Why does she know everything? Like, it's one thing to be smart. It's another thing to be like brilliant. And I understand after she has her adventures, she adds several decades to her life, and that should explain some of it. But even before that, she was bloody brilliant, and they didn't give me the explanation as to why she knows all the stuff that she knows.
And that's kind of why I'm still on the fence, because her episode is my favorite. I love how much that spoke to, just talking about the selection, Black women making things happen, the magic of Black women, how Black women even now have to sometimes treat themselves smaller than they are. So her becoming Hippolyta the Discoverer was great to me, but we didn't get to see any of that other than her figuring out that little puzzle thing before then. And then at the end, I felt like she was kind of like a deus ex machina. You know, she was there smart with everything they needed her to be smart with to move the story along, which I loved, but her character and herself and how you get there was a little bit hand-washed.
Yeah.
Especially when you think again what happened with Diana and leaving.
That's what makes me mad.
And how her
she's out here, Hippolyta's out here living her best life several times over, and you have a child that you haven't checked on. Like, it's one thing to say, all right, I'm giving my child to someone else, watch my kid, I'm going to do my thing for a little bit. She just left. Like, it wasn't voluntary, but she knew that she left. And she allowed her child to think that both of her parents were dead. It wasn't like Uncle George was here. Diane was out here thinking she had nobody in the world. Then she gets cursed, and the police are on her ass. And, Hippolyta kills a cop and leaves her child. Like, she doesn't know that she left her child stuff there, but you know what you did. You know what happened. You know how you have a kid with a dead parent. And you out here, dancing in Paris and, fighting Romans or whatever the hell you in Africa. All of that stuff, you could have came home sooner. And it makes me angry. It's how selfish it is. It's incredibly selfish. And I guess there's an argument to be made that Black women give up everything for the sake of everybody else. But that's what being a parent is. And we're not talking about her leaving, everybody. We're talking about her child. who does not have a father anymore, who just lost her father, just lost Emmett freaking Till in the middle of all this Lovecraft stuff, and you gone. You on the other side of the universe living it up. And I understand Diane's anger.
Maybe I don't know if I see. I guess maybe I saw it differently. Like I felt like he understood that this was a situation where she had control over time, and so at the same time, it's like she can go back at any point in time that she wants to.
But she didn't.
I mean, technically,
she came back late.
Could have gone back to before George died, really, if she wanted to.
Then she should have. She didn't. She came back a few weeks later after Diana got possessed.
Yeah, but I mean,
that's not okay.
I don't think she knew necessarily that was what was going to happen. I think that she showed up. If you look at the timing, she showed up exactly the same. Like, if you think about it, if she didn't show up at that point in time, then Diana would have been dead. So I'm pretty sure that she was able to wheel in the specific time enough to be able to go back for that period. And maybe she would have did things differently, but I feel like maybe she thought she had more control over the time period.
None of that was expressed.
It's more specific in comparison to a week or a day.
She didn't say any of that. Because Diane said everything that I'm saying to her. Because Diane was pissed. And her mom wasn't like, oh, it was an accident. I thought I could come back sooner. No, she was like, it is what it is. So that what you're saying, that argument, if it were true, it would have been presented. It is not. Even if it were true.
But I think that's a writing decision.
Oh, everything is a writing decision.
That's like them not having a lot of time.
The show's.
That's my overall issue with the show was stuff like that, where like we're going through the set pieces, but we're not laying into setting up the characters for things that they would naturally do on their own. Like I feel like they want to get to point 8 because I watched the showrunner talk about how they want to get from they want to get that set piece is supposed to be the center of the show, so they want to make sure they get all those pieces in line. It didn't matter what was happening in the story between episode before that and episode after. They want to make sure they got that point across in that episode. And that's not how, I mean, in my opinion, in good writing, you shouldn't have to go through, I want this to happen to get these characters here. It should be the other way around. The characters should naturally be given situations that make sense for them in each situation and then go from there. The show, on the other hand, is like, this is really cool. We want to put this in the show because it's cool. Let's get our characters to this point where we make it happen. And they kind of, that's my main issue with the show overall is I wish that there was more of like giving the characters good motivations to do the things they do. So some of the stuff that happens between them and Christina, for example, I'm like, you guys are just, it is all plot, like design here. We're trying to get from point A to point B so we can have our Raiders of the Lost Ark moment and stuff like that. But natural characters wouldn't do this.
All right. So let's go ahead and wrap it up here. We're going to do ratings A through F. Jay, what do you give it?
Even though definitely what Denny's saying in terms of the plot points and characters and how they react, I've said, I think they've had issues, but Lovecraft Country was something that was not even remotely on my radar, and I missed it. That's why I was asking if there going to be a second season, because I would absolutely be tuned into that. I signed up for HBO just to be able to watch this with everybody so I could live tweet and everything. It was done extremely well. And the things that I have gripes about why they are legit doesn't take away my enjoyment of this. And the fact that a lot of what they did for horror genre for Black people was done well.
Hey, Denny, A through F?
I've been thinking about this for a while now. I think I'm going to, if I just focus on like the production, the cinematography, which was amazing. Everyone was lit perfectly in each shot. The directors, cast, I would probably give that an A. But like overall show, I'm gonna give it like B minus. I think like maybe a solid B, maybe a little bit hard. I'll land it in the B because I think that they were really ambitious what they covered, and I think that they did succeed in a lot of it, and it got people talking. So. Yeah, I think I put it in the B.
All right, I'm going to give it the coveted A+, which you can probably count on one hand the number of things I've given an A+ to in the 4 years we've been doing this podcast. So,
2 of them.
Yeah, Watchmen was the other. I have criticisms. I have criticisms mostly of the characters, which is you're supposed to. Like they're imperfect people and they do stupid things. Like that's normal. That's how it's supposed to be. I love the genre changing every episode. Like that is really one of my top features of this show is that we get a whole different show. It's like a different movie every episode. I think it's beautiful. I think the cinematography, but there's a lot of purples and reds and blues, and it's just a pleasure to watch. I love the strength of the characters. I think it was cast well. Obviously, there's some room for improvement, but the room for improvement to me is marginal. I love the pacing. It was super fast, and no episode was I ever bored. But I still was able to, for the most part, keep up with what was going on. And I also love the way, and we didn't talk about this, the way that Black history is jam-packed into every single episode. And you're going to have to watch it more than once to really pick up on all the subtleties of all the things that are just happening in the background. Like obviously Emmett Till, they made that real front and center. Even little details like Mamie Till, Emmett Till's mother, talked about how his body just reeked in the when they had him laying in Chicago for viewing, and how you could smell it for blocks. And they included that in the show. Like they were out there standing in line waiting to go see the body, and they're like, "What is that smell?" Like that little subtle stuff that's actually really important because his mother does go in depth discussing how that the way that body reeked more than others was really just showing how disgusting what happened to them was. It was really not something that you could ignore. So that sort of stuff. And then like they go to the bar. The bar is called Denmark Bessie's, which is like your slave rebellion leader, your Nat Turner that doesn't get the recognition that Nat Turner got. Like it's that like little tiny things. All of it to me was just beautifully done. Like I really cannot wait for more of this show. So yeah, A+. So let me go ahead and wrap up real quick. As always, we're always looking for new guests. We do have a Twitch stream that goes on, and we would, if you want to be a guest on that, make sure you reach out to us on our socials. As always, subscribe to us in iTunes, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Stitcher, Google Play Music, Podcast, Podbean, whatever. Pretty much wherever podcasts found, you can find Negro Justice League. Follow us on Twitter at Black Nerdcast, Black Nerd CAST as in podcast. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/Negro Justice League. Make sure you go to negrojusticeleague.com. We do have our repertoire of all of our past episodes on the website, and it's searchable. So if you want to search for something and we discussed it, it's there. Also have the Negro Justice League shop on negrojusticeleague.com where you can get t-shirts, mugs, bags, books, all types of stuff at negrojusticeleague.com. Follow us on Twitch, twitch.tv/Black Nerdcast. That is where you will get the live episodes. If you want to watch live, interact with the guests, interact with us, all of that is live. And rate and review us everywhere, in particular on iTunes, so that other people can find us. We do not currently have an agenda for next week's episode, so I'm not going to tell you what that is. But always never forget to mention we do have a Discord server. Discord is basically, if you're not familiar, is a private server where we have chat rooms where you can talk with us, you can talk with our guests, you can talk with our community, all of that sort of thing. We don't post that link publicly often, and that's because just by the nature of our community being emphasizing Blackness and all of that, we don't want to attract too many trolls who are come in and try to do what they do, especially in the political climate that we're in. So if you are interested in joining the Discord, it is totally open. You're totally welcome to come, but make sure you reach out to us on one of our platforms, send us a message, and I will send you a link and add you to the Discord server. Other than that, I'm going to wrap it up here. I am Cherry, and this was Negro Justice.